Hello and welcome to Lockdown Dads. I'm James Miller, author of Dads Don't Babysit, editor of workingdads.co.uk and father of two children. And here is...
Ian Dinwiddie. I'm the founder of Inspiring Dads, a coaching business that helps working dads to balance their stressful lives. And I've got that wrong. I should have known what my seven-word pitch is, but not today. But anyway, that's moving swiftly on from my inability to explain what I do. And we're delighted to have a new guest with us this week on episode number 31 of Lockdown Dads. And it is Nathan McGurl, who is the founder of Study Buddy and also, I believe, a pioneer of dad blogging back from when I was just starting work, I think. So a lot more experience in the field, I think, than either James or I. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So Nathan, we start off with the question that, it got manipulated last week into something entirely different and quite interesting. But how are you, at the moment, and how have you been during lockdown?
It's been a good week. It's been a bit fraught. Start off with delivery of a new tumble dryer, which was nowhere near as glamorous as I've made that sound, and delivered by, I know that the world is getting younger, but delivered by two people I honestly thought I should check to see whether at least one of them had a driving license before they disappeared. So neither of them were particularly useful. So it started off like that. We progressed into a leaky roof, but it's Friday, and as a nod to last week's episode, I'm about a gin and tonic away from being magenta.
Fantastic! It's good to see that someone is listening into the show and the things we get up to. So, James, last week, if we're following on with the colour, you were black for a variety of different reasons, partly because you like the colour black. But how are you feeling this week?
I'm not a colour this week, basically. I don't know. Well, it's more complicated than that. I don't know. I quite like the colour thing, but I was, again, obviously thinking about it this morning and going, I'm not a colour at all, because it has been, I don't know, it's a bit of a trick. I'm very busy today, very stressed, because I tried to do some work this morning, and that's a bad idea because homeschool happens in the morning and work in the afternoon. You try and combine the two, just doesn't happen. So I didn't get the things done that I wanted to get done, and that's just, annoying. But on the, I don't know, I don't feel too bad. I think I've been reading a lot of positive stuff about how lockdown might end sooner rather than later. Obviously, we've got the latest vaccine news, which is not quite as exciting as perhaps some are portraying, because we're not going to get these vaccines until the autumn. But, all vaccines are good vaccines, right? And I got my contact lens back yesterday. That was the big thing this week. Last week, whilst chasing the children around the garden in a game of It, I was wearing a hoodie. The wee bit of string that holds your hood came up, whipped out my contact lens into the garden at night, never finding that again. Yesterday, £100 for a new one, which I ought to have been sad about. But actually, it's great having contact lenses because you don't have to wear the mask, and the glasses is a massive fag. I can get running again. Yeah, sorry, Nathan, but it's amazing how much better my life is for £100 right contact lens. So, I think I'm probably more up than down, but I'm a range of different colours. I think, like most people are most of the time. What about you, Ian? Are you a colour or are you a feeling?
Well, I'm feeling. I'm amazed at how expensive your contact lenses are. I mean, I don't know what they're made of, but that's expensive. Have you got a special eye? Oh, you got the hard one. Oh,
I got gas permeable, so they last me for years.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah, that sounds like a very expensive soft contact lens.
I used to have hard ones, and then I went to soft ones and never looked back. Yeah, that's what you should be doing.
I used to have hard ones, and then I hit 40. Oh, that was, I don't know what that means, but it sounds like it should be a joke. I don't really know what it means, but it sounds good. Sorry. Yes, Ian, tell us how you are.
Well, a bit like you, James. My week's been up and down. So we've had broadband's been the bane of my life. We're on day 2 of broadband issues, to the extent that I might just disappear from this recording and then reappear without recording, without my face, which, if you're on the podcast, won't really impact you at all. However, it is, so broadband's been a bit of a pain. We're on day 2. We're lacking a bit of confidence in whether OpenReach engineers will turn up when they're supposed to and fix whatever is going wrong, because it just seems to be dropping in and out, just kind of randomly. So that's been a bit disappointing. Kids had 2 birthdays, so with 2 days of broadband being out, 2 birthdays at the weekend, which went much better than than you thought they would, probably, James. So kids were very happy. Everything went nice and smoothly on that. And I had a haircut. We talked about the haircut. My wife cut my hair with the clippers, and it went okay, I think.
Yeah, I haven't managed that yet. I have got clippers. There we go. I mean, for the video. See, I took your tip last week and went straight on eBay and got myself some clippers, but I haven't got around to actually doing it yet. But I will feel
you'll feel like $1 million.
Yeah, I'll feel a lot better once I've done my hair as well. Let's not talk about hair clippers and contact lenses, because that's not very good content, really. Let's talk to Nathan about the path, how you came to be interested in fatherhood and the issues around fatherhood. And obviously you're an early adopter when it came to daddy blogging. I mean, what was the thinking there? How did that happen?
I'd never really thought of myself as an early adopter. I think it was just sort of, I'm nerdy. And so back in those days, the internet was relatively new. So it was, so my only son actually, son was born in the year 2000. And I remember distinctly being told by my wife that she was pregnant. I was at work. There was no preamble. We weren't expecting. We'd only been married for a couple of months. And she said, "I'm pregnant." I thought, "Who is this?" And stopped phoning me at work. And I just remember thinking, that's it. Everything's changed. I was a young 23, just moved to the southwest from my degree in London. And so I thought, wow, there's a lot going on. And we were living in Somerset Street, and I was working in Bristol. So I had loads of time on my hands, driving backwards and forwards from home to work. And it's not a good time if you're sort of a creative and chaotic person, which, as it works out, I am. So I'd left work thinking, oh wow, there's so much. I'm going to keep a diary. I'm going to write this stuff down. All of these things flying through my head, and then I can explain to baby McGurl when they come along, and all of those kinds of things. Well, that's crazy. Why would you keep a diary? No one keeps a diary. It's nearly Y2K, as we used to call it. I'm going to write it in Word. I'll do something. I'll fire up my Windows 3.1 for work groups, and I'm going to document this stuff. And of course, drive a little bit further. I'm now probably coming up to Shepton Mallet and thinking, Word is crazy. Why would you write it in Word? I'm going to have a database, because then I can search. Well, by the time I'd actually got home, I was a conglomerate. We were father care. I was rivaling the big names. It was all going on. And that's very much the way that my life has been, I suppose. This sort of embryonic idea, and no pun intended, actually, that then becomes something massive. So at that time, as I say, the internet was just sort of coming about. So I thought, I'm going to start a website. And so I did. And it was called myfirstkid.co.uk. And it was, I don't even know if it's still about. How embarrassing is that? I should have checked before I came on. If it is, probably don't go onto it, should I? I would imagine it's filled with viruses and Trojan. But so it was just a way of sort of, I suppose, a vanity project, really, that I could put down the stuff in my head and get them down there. Actually, what happened was people then started emailing me. And of course, that didn't happen an awful lot back then. I sound really old. This actually is my natural hair color. It's not trying to lie. People would email in and go, really like that, really enjoyed it, could connect to it, that kind of stuff. And then I started to become more sort of aware, I guess, of what was happening in fatherhood. And one of the things in particular that really struck me was Parenthood, because I don't think fatherhood really was even much of a thing back then. Parenthood was all about the mums. So it was mother care. There were mother and baby groups. It was mother and toddler parking. The NHS book, which just goes to show how long ago it was, that came out had filled with, 12, 13 chapters. And chapter 5 was mainly for dads. So the idea that if you don't do anything else, men, just put your pipe down, your pint of beer to one side, stop beating the dog or chopping up wood, and read this, because that'll help you do the minimum that you need to do as a father. And I thought really felt a bit aggrieved by the whole thing. So that's then became not quite militant, because I'm too lazy for that. But it was much more then about looking at some of the issues of why can't I join the Tesco's or Safeway, actually, I think it was back then, the Safeway Club, to why have they just assumed it's Mrs. Nathan McGurl? I mean, you could be Ms. or Miss, Mrs., but you couldn't be Mr. Crazy. So it's so yeah, and also then we actually, funny enough, appeared in the Independent because of the blog. And this was at the time that sort of parental responsibility was coming in, and you could take leave, and so it was an exciting time to be alive. And so really, that's what that was.
Why were you aggrieved? That's the interesting point of that, because as you say, it's a long time ago. You know, they didn't have cars or shops or whatever, you know, or the internet. Shows how far things have come in 20 years, actually. But you know, we're all very familiar with the days of Safeway. Let's face it here. But you know, as I say, things have moved on a lot in the last 20 years, and you know, we now expect, you know, the stuff I do at Working Dads, we know that most men want more paternity leave, want to be more hands-on. That wasn't the case 20 years ago. So you are an early adopter in that sense. Was there a reason why you wanted to be more hands-on, or why you wanted, you know, why you thought about fatherhood more than perhaps presumably most of your friends and acquaintances?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, because I wonder whether it's that men want to take part more now, or just that they weren't expected to back then. And I think there's, I'm not even sure it's necessarily even as profound as a chicken and egg, but I think you need a certain amount of societal movement so that actually it can become permissible for men to actually stay at home, which, I mean, that was unthinkable back then, definitely. And I mean, even now, I think there's probably an element of stigma that some people might feel, depending on the communities that they come from, the upbringing that they had. So I suppose aggrieved is my reflection on it. So I might not have been aggrieved at the time. I might have just been a little put out. But in retrospect, actually, I think I was right to be aggrieved, because if I wanted to be more active, I wanted to be the one signing up, then actually there shouldn't have been this presumption that it's the woman's role. And we look at it an awful lot from the other side, quite rightly, that the woman's place is absolutely not in the home. Well, the converse of that has to be true, that in which case it can be anybody's place in the home.
It's an interesting one to bring up, because the government have got themselves in a bit of a mess this week, haven't they? In a couple of different ways. It's like they almost doubled down in terms of gender stereotyping. And I know, James, you wrote about it, didn't you? You wrote about Rishi Sunak thanking mums, and also the Department of Health, I think, put out a poster that seemed to reinforce the idea that dads sit on the sofa and women do all the homeschool and all the cleaning. Now we know that women in the pandemic are doing more, but men are also doing a lot more.
Yeah, look, that's the mouth, the tight mouth of rage there. Yeah, I was actually just on the IPSI podcast before this, the Association for Independent Professionals and the Self-Employed, talking about exactly this sort of stuff. It came up right at the end, and I just went off on one because it is completely outrageous. You may have noticed I ranted on Twitter about it as well. I mean, this government, unfortunately, has a sexist streak a mile wide, and it is absolute nonsense. It's bad for men, it's bad for women, it's bad for everyone, that they just expect mums to step up and do all the stuff in the pandemic. They expect women to do domestic work. It's, you know, it is genuinely unbelievable that in 2021, you know, here we are 21 years on, when Nathan was like thinking about this stuff and writing a blog, that the government hasn't caught up, that there might be something going on, that, you know, maybe gender stereotypes are bad. It's just mind-blowing.
But I think, don't you think it's just it's a laziness, really, isn't it? I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, these people, the politicians, these people are now so concerned with the public perceptions around them, because it's now a personality contest. It's not about your policies even necessarily, but actually they're so concerned about it that if they'd have thought about it for a minute, they wouldn't have done it. Just think utter arrogance and laziness, that even if there's a storm about it today, tomorrow it'll be forgotten about, because someone's going to realise that actually, what do you mean we're still not shipping anything to Northern Ireland? And there'll be another problem, and we'll move on and move on. It's sort of burying. I just think it's, as you say, it's a symptom of a government that just seems to not really care an awful lot.
It's a lack of in the room. That's you know what it is. You know, you look at the daily press conferences that have been led by women on a handful of occasions, because they're led by men, because men do things. Yeah, women, they stay at home and look after children. It's just outrageous. But if you don't have women in the room, and it's a great advert for diversity and inclusion. If you don't have different voices, different people in the room, you will get stupid outcomes. That is the best way to describe them. Whereas if you have a diverse range of voices and experiences in the room, and frankly, women, that's not diversity, is it? It's half the bloody population. That should not be diverse in government. So there we go. That's where we are. I just want to quickly go back to the blog before we talk about what you do now with Study Buddy, which I think might be useful for parents who are homeschooling. But what was the reaction like? You say you got some emails. Presumably there were emails from dad saying, "This is good. This is how I feel too." Or did you get, I don't know, emails from mums or emails from dads going, buy some trousers?
No, those ones are obviously working in mines at the time, so they didn't have access to email. But what also, so we did get lots of emails from men, but loads, actually disproportionately more from women, who really liked the thought that actually this was going on inside their husband partners, the father of their child's head too. And I say I don't want to build it up to sound like it was profound, because it wasn't. It was things like there's multiple births, so triplets and twins that run through my wife's side of the family, and so I'm not sure if I could cope with having more than one at a time. And so it was also those kinds. It was more of an irreverent type of thing, not necessarily a manifesto for fathers, which actually was going on about the same time. I think Fathers Unlimited, Fathers something. I think that was starting off before they became superheroes and chained themselves to suspension bridges. It was sort of this movement, I think, of around parental rights.
No, there's a value in being, irreverent or even in the nicest possible way banal. In talking about the ordinary stuff of being a dad, because nobody was in those days, and to some extent, not that many people are now. There's still a value in saying, I have these feelings, because it's so weird for dads to talk about it. There's not permission to be that caring person. So saying
exactly.
Whatever, isn't it really boring changing nappies? Not, I don't want to change nappies. It's just, having a straight conversation about the actual mechanics of changing nappies. Exactly. And that is not allowed. So there is a huge value in that, I think.
And I think also what you tend to get is quite polarized, and quite rightly so. You've got this, you need sort of people at the forefront of it that can pave the way and make it accessible, make it acceptable to talk about it. And that tends to feel much more activist-like. But as you say, the vast majority of us are just getting on with it. So, I mean, it's whether that is changing nappies, it doesn't have to be sort of more to it than that. But having an outlet where you can feel like it's all right just to chat about what's in your head, I think is really important in all kinds of walks of life.
I mean, talking about getting on with it, the thing that here's one of my clunky gear changes slightly. One of the things that a lot of us are getting on with at the moment, of course, is homeschooling. That's your current project. We're not homeschooling. Well,
yes and yes.
There's a connection there. Anyway, Study Buddy is your current.
Yes, absolutely.
Project sounds like it's the sort of thing, like it's building a model aircraft that you pick up and put down. It's your job. It's your life.
Although, to be fair, it did start off more like a sort of a project. So it was well, not hobbyist, but it was deeply practical at the time. So my son, who obviously was born back as I say, in 2000, so when he was going through his GCSEs when he was 16, he is, God love him, he is me. So he's sort of a bit lazy, a sprinkling more of cockiness in there than possibly healthy. So he's always going to do well because he's him. And I don't really need to try. And that manana approach to life is fine if actually you're relaxed about whatever happens next. But unfortunately for him, he's every bit as ambitious as his mum. And so he wanted to be a doctor, brain surgeon, quantum physicist, whatever it was that he had in his head to do. But his idea to get there was osmosis. So if I just sit near YouTube or an open book, I'm going to get 9s and 8s or A stars and whatever it was that he was doing at the time. And so obviously being the coaching new man dad, we tried the usual tactics that any of the listeners or watchers, I guess, will have tried. So the first thing is, I believe in you, son, because that's what we've been told. All you need to do is dream, and you can be a unicorn or a merman or whatever else. And of course, that that doesn't really work because you also need to work a little bit. So you move on from that, and then you try, well, okay, yeah, definitely dream, believe in yourself. I'm all with that, and I still believe in you. But if you do a little bit of work, how about I give you a £5? And then so you just try a little bit of coaxing, a little bit of this, and then you go on to that, and I go, okay, you don't want money because everything just appears magically anyway for kids nowadays, which might be another podcast in its own right. So go, right, well, if you don't do it, I'm going to have to start taking the games away. I'll take the phone away, which obviously is like severing a limb. So I'm going to start having to punish you. And I don't want to because I love you and I believe in you and I'm still offering you a £5, but please, otherwise. And then it gets to the point where the only thing left in the parenting toolkit at that stage is just to scream and pull your hair and go, for Christ's sake, I don't know why. Why can't you just do it? I know what's happening to you because it happened to me. I didn't work. And look at me now, son. So it was that kind of thing. And then it came to Easter just before his exams. And well, actually, the shouting is not as effective as I'd hoped it might be. It was just stressful because every conversation was geared around, why aren't you working? And it became too much. And no one wants that, but you actually can't avoid it either. It's like some kind of magnetic car crash. It's awful. So I thought, right, we need to step outside of this. This is getting crazy. What can we do that can diffuse it and help him? And I just had 2 questions really that I kept asking him and he wasn't able to answer. And the first one was, how much work have you got to do? And then the second one was, and have you got enough time to do all of that work? And fortunately at the time I was working for a large financial services organization in sort of these big multi-million-pound digital transformation and diversity and inclusion projects and all this kind of stuff with loads of moving parts and successfully getting away with not working very hard. So I knew the kinds of things that you had to do from a project management point of view, and that was just sort of create this backlog. So I'll answer the questions, and I found out the information through school or online resources, came up with this list, and then could talk to him about it practically. And the real watershed bit came from the fact that it just wasn't emotional anymore, because it wasn't me telling him what I thought he should do. It was the universe has determined that this is the stuff that your course needs. And so what are you going to do?
Is that perhaps a tip for parents who are homeschooling now then? It's very much, there's obviously lots of tips you could share, but perhaps the overriding one is pull the emotion out of it. Is that the...
So I think there are a couple of things that the study buddy was then created to help others. So we've broken down all of the GCSEs and IGCSEs, smattering of BTECs and A levels as well, so that we can create this backlog of like a master to-do list, if you like. And that's the bit that helps. And any of us have worked on any projects, and I mean even in the house, like you've got to get a new shed, or you need to make lasagna. I mean, whatever it is you do, you're going to have even if it's in your head, a list of things and steps that you need to go through. And really that's what this sort of agile, quasi-agile project management approach was. What stuff do you need to do? And then the next thing was, well, when are you going to do it? And I'd absolutely think that that's key for the keeping hold of your sanity in lockdown when it comes to homeschooling, because you can't have a situation where they've literally just put the spoon back in the bowl after their cornflakes and they're now saying, what's for lunch? What's for lunch? What am I doing now? Right, okay, you need to do your maths now. Don't, if you could just give me 5 minutes because daddy's got to just go and do a call. Yeah, dad, done my maths, what's next? Hang on a minute, I just need to get out of the Zoom picture. But actually, if what you've managed to do is engage them in a process of creating this schedule, and it can be fun. Kids actually do find it fun. It's only when it gets older that this idea of managing time and organization and schedules has this sort of like dark, foreboding shadow all over it. But doing that, this is the stuff you've got to do. Have a hand in when you're going to do it, and also factor in some of the fun stuff they like. So, like, you can't sit on YouTube all day, but what seems like a reasonable amount. And if, as James said, there's no emotion in it at that time in the conversation, actually it becomes a lot easier to say, well, a couple of hours, does that seem all right to you? And actually it doesn't matter how old, well, obviously there's a point at which they are definitely too young to have that conversation, but anywhere sort of primary school and up, they're already used to having someone tell them what's right or try to negotiate it in the form of their teacher. And so as sort of quasi teacher assistants, if nothing else, actually we can sort of do that, have that conversation as well, talk about what's expected. And when they know, obviously they're going to try to push the boundaries, because we all do, but they're a lot happier with it.
Presumably top of the list is make a study timetable and then colour it in, right? That's always the first thing you do. That is, I mean, come on. That is... Would
it be really crass to say the first thing to do would be to go to the website and buy one? I don't... There are...
all morning drawing it, and then you spend all afternoon colouring in, and that's your first day of revision done, right?
But that was exactly, so funny enough, that was exactly what happened when I came up with Study Buddy the first time. So I think it must have taken me about 4 or 5 days. I mean, solid time, not sort of elapsed. I mean, absolute effort to try to get this thing created for Jake over his 10 GCSEs and Sharpie. I mean, different colour Sharpies in my bestest handwriting on magnets. So it was something that he could move around, because you might want to come back to it. So it's not enough just to do a hand sort of scribbled down thing. And so when I came up with the system, I just put it out there on LinkedIn or Mumsnet, who actually really don't like me, or wherever it was, that it went, and then people would say, loved that. And when I left Lloyd's and I was thinking about what I was going to do next, and having conscious aware that I've just given away the name of the employer that I tried to pretend I wasn't working at, that they would say it was great, but I'd have paid you if I didn't have to go through all of those specifications, try to insulate and tape up a magnetic whiteboard, and all of those kinds of things. So that's where the idea for the business came, that, well, I can help promote the method and talk about the methodology. And I've been in schools and I've talked to the kids about how they can cut up Rice Krispie packets and do exactly the same thing. You don't need to spend money, but for those parents who actually just don't have the time or the inclination, want to get up going quickly, then actually that's what the Study Buddy was there for, to help them. And as I say, now with the younger learning bit as well. So we've got some nice ones with the sort of much more pictorial, so that the kids don't feel like it's too oppressive.
So Nathan, you've got a younger daughter as well, haven't you? Your older son and younger daughter. How did have you sort of experienced changes in how the product is developed as you've learnt things from sort of her approach and what she found useful, sort of almost, but possibly as a live kind of case study?
Absolutely, yeah, completely. So if it wasn't for the fact that both of them have got my my penchants for sarcasm and laziness, I would be convinced that they were from different fathers, because actually they are chalk and cheese in so many different ways. And so seeing how that adapted, because it was built for the procrastinating boy, I knew that it worked well with the overzealous girl. And having started with gender stereotypes and how bad they are, actually sometimes these stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason, and I appreciate that some girls procrastinate, but it does tend to be a trait of boys for different teen psychological reasons, I think. But so it was built for the procrastinator, but actually Emily's really conscientious, and she's sort of a bit of a crowd pleaser, and she has to work a bit harder. So she really likes it because she can see her progress and she knows that she is powering on. So it helps to give her a confidence boost. And as I say, that this kind of approach helps with those who are really anxious. So something that's been really, really pleasing is a couple of anecdotal case studies, if you like, of teens who'd been burning the midnight oil, getting really stressed, maybe even under the doctor for sort of their anxiety levels, and as part of a package, I'm sure. But this approach to knowing what it is that you've got to do really does help, because you can be more assured in what you've done and what you've got left, but also helpful for the parents, because if you are creating this whiteboard and you're scheduling a week ahead, which is what we advocate, then you can see if your child has got just 12 hours a day as study and there's no free time, then actually you've got something you can point to, and you can say, this isn't me thinking about it, let's look at your whiteboard and see, I'm really worried that you're not taking enough breaks. How do you feel about the amount of work that you're giving yourself? And it's as I say, it becomes less judgment, which was absolutely key.
I was going to say, I think there's something really nice about the sense that the that the students got a bit of sort of control over it, and they can pick and choose how they're going to do things. And I think that's something we've talked about before, and I think it was a homeschooling tip for my 11-year-old and my 8-year-old, was getting them involved in what the schedule looks like, and that was really powerful in terms of getting engagement. So
yeah, absolutely. Control is it's the clincher. It's absolutely what that's about, and not for the younger ones, because the younger ones are excited, they like doing it, and they can factor in their time, and they can determine that 8 till 11 is going to be Lego time, and then you can have that conversation later about it. But with the teens, the world happens to them, and so don't, just leave me alone. I don't want to. I know what I'm doing. Trust me, that's if you get to that point, cool. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone. Whereas actually, if you can get them involved and get them to feel like they're accountable and responsible, then it's fantastic. And I don't mean to suggest for 1 second that we implemented this on the Sunday and come Monday morning we'd had the inverse Kevin and Perry effect, and my child came downstairs hair slicked down and suit and tie, because it wasn't like that. But what did happen over time was he started to feel like it was much more about he controlled it. No, I don't want to do Saturday morning because Dave's having a party Friday night, so I want to have more of a lie-in. So fine, give yourself more of a lie-in. And that was important as well. We did the free time and the social stuff before we scheduled the study. So the process was commitments, school day, you mark it school day, rugby training, rugby matches, dinner with the grandparents, whatever was going on that you couldn't get out of, mark that up. And then, so what kinds of stuff do you want to do? Well, there's a FIFA tournament going on, whatever else, Minecraft stuff. And so he'd put that in as well. I want to spend a good couple of hours perfecting an overhead kick. And so you block in the time for stuff that you want, and then you say, okay, well, there's blank time now. That's fair game. What are you going to do? And not a challenge. Don't fill every blank. And partly it was the age-old parenting trick of utter manipulation, because he wasn't actually in control. I was in control because he was being led to decide, but he felt that he was. And that feeling as a teen was absolutely everything. And it was easy. I mean, and sometimes with what he wanted to do, but you think, well, what's the alternative? Shout? Well, we've been there. We know that didn't work. We'll give it a go. Let's review on Sunday, which is what we did. So every Sunday evening, 20, 30 minutes, we just have a sort of a check back. How did the week go? Again, no judgment. If he hadn't done it, he hadn't done it. It just goes back into the to-do pile. And if he'd done it, it gets put into done. And that sense of having done as well, it's amazing. And again, exactly those processes work in the younger ages as well. You can schedule either maths, or you can be quite specific and say, well, we need to do algebra. And there are some great resources out there. We don't deal with content, we only deal with process. But places like Oak National Academy and others are amazing. They've got, if you're actually genuinely homeschooling for one reason or another, then actually that I would go there, have a look at the curriculum, the lesson plans, and then start to build it around that.
So let's do tips. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go first. I've decided I'm going to do myself first just because I've got it written down. It's CKC. That's my tip this week. I'm working on this. I haven't quite nailed it yet, but it's the new motto, which is communication is key with COVID. CKC. That's what you got to remember. Everything is improved by better communication. Whether that is with your employer, with your employees, with your partner, with your children. And it's a nice little motto that I've invented. It's not that good. I think it could be refined, but it'll do for now. I might get tattooed somewhere when this is all over. I won't. CKC, that's my tip this week. Where should we go? Nathan, have you got a tip?
Go on then, but mine's nowhere near profound enough now. I worry that I'm not, having heard some of these previous ones. And my tip, I actually had two. One, but I'm going to go with the power of an Excel spreadsheet, in that if you want some time to yourself, whether it's in work or at home, fire up an Excel spreadsheet. Because if someone comes to you, and have you got a minute, and they see an Excel spreadsheet, either printed or on the desktop, they will assume that you're busy and they will walk away. And in a workplace, That's priceless. And for absolutely added bonus points, hold a highlighter. That absolutely does it, because people will just assume if it's a spreadsheet, you're up to something really intense. Could be anything, alphabetizing your CD collection, but just have something there.
Good tip. Again,
Yeah, it's good.
It's not that we don't want to make out that you're some man from history, because you're not. I mean, you're a Save Age Plus.
Yeah, you are.
CD. I did say that, but I'm not sure that alphabetize your MP3 collection actually is really bringing me any closer. What you've downloaded from Napster? No. Reaching through your Atari games.
MySpace. Are we going to check out your MySpace profile later?
I am Tom.
The old man now. This is no good. We are, but Ian, what's your tip?
I had a couple of quotes actually. I'm going to use one of them. Zig Ziglar. I had two. Zig Ziglar, American, the best name ever. American sort of motivational guru from the kind of 80s. I think was his sort of 70s and 80s. His key time. I think it ties in really nicely with Nathan and Study Buddy and this sense of working hard and working out what you need to do to achieve things. And he said the elevator to success is shut, but the stairs are always open. Again, I think that speaks to this sense of incremental gains, stepping ahead. And there is no fast track in a lot of this sort of thing. There's no fast track when you're studying for GCSEs. There's no osmosis, as Nathan's son would like to have believed in a few years ago. So I think, Zig Ziglar. That's good. Nice quote to bear in mind, I think.
Or steal from my Instagram page, actually.
Yeah, it's good. Zig Ziglar's got loads of good stuff.
There you go. He's a good a tip in himself. Look up Zig Ziglar.
Nathan, if people want to know more about Study Buddy and about the work that you're doing and the business, where can they go?
Best place is the website. So that's www.thestudybuddy.com. Although we are also on Facebook and Instagram under the Study Buddy Studios, but the website is far and away the best place. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. My internet is still working, which is a minor miracle, really, considering what's been going on. So this has been episode number 31 of Lockdown Dads. We'll be back next week with another episode, another interesting and informative conversation. But for now and for today, Nathan, thank you very much for being here. James, pleasure as always, and I look forward to seeing your haircut when you've got it sorted.
Next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.